Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the fourth episode in which Naruto is physically too strong. There's something to say about being overly strong. When you have the ability to do whatever you want, you realize that you don't actually want to do anything. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. The start of the Chunin exams. The explosion sent tremors rippling through the Hidden Leaf village. People stumbled and produced clatter to the ground. A fireball stretched into the air, mushrooming outwards near its peak, and the air became noticeably hotter for it. The people of the Hidden Leaf took one look at it before resuming their work. The other people, however, weren't so nonplussed. A concerned sound ninja approached the nearest person, a perturbed Leaf citizen, and questioned her. "Hey lady, that was an explosion, right? I'm not going crazy?" the man asked. He pointed to the fireball that still hadn't dispersed. The lady followed his finger, staring down the fire with lidded eyes. She nodded once, then turned back to the strange man interrogating her. "It would appear so, yes." The sound ninja waited for it to continue. When several seconds passed and she hadn't, he decided to elaborate. "And are you not at all concerned with the fact that an explosion went off in the middle of your village?" The lady shrugged. "I've seen worse." The sound ninja sputtered. "You've seen worse?" The lady nodded. "Yup. At least it isn't Sunday." She then shuddered. "I hope Naruto is busy this Sunday. It's my first day off in weeks." The lady then rushed off, ushering her confused toddler along behind her. The sound ninja watched her walk away, eyes wide in his daze, before turning back to the raging inferno. Smaller explosions erupted around the initial one, sending shockwaves around the area. And still the people refused to react. The sound ninja saw maybe one of two Anbu openly crouching on the rooftops and watching the matter with a vague sense of interest, but otherwise they made no move to intervene. Deciding that satiating his curiosity was worth it, the young man ventured up to the rooftops. He didn't make any sudden movements, instead choosing to wait for the masked ninja to acknowledge him. Luckily it didn't take long. One of the masked men or women, it was hard to tell, turned to him. They didn't say anything, instead opting to simply nod to show that they were listening. "Aren't any of you going to handle that?" he asked. The explosions were being accentuated by high-impact gales. The Anbu said nothing for a moment, effectively creeping the sound ninja out. When they did speak, it was in a fairly androgynous voice. "No, we aren't. We are stationed on a far worse threat." A trickle of worry snaked its way into his heart. For a second he considered the idea of the Leaf Anbu knowing of the impending invasion. The sound ninja silently snaked his arm behind him, hoping to arm himself for a confrontation he knew he wouldn't be able to win. Then the Leaf Anbu snorted, an action mimicked by his partner. And, speaking of the devil, the lead Anbu started. "How are you, Naruto? Are you done with your grocery shopping?" The sound ninja, nerves effectively frayed, spun around when the Anbu started talking to someone just over his shoulder. Weapon out, he prepared himself for a legendary ninja of titanic proportions capable of diverting a ninja village's attention away from an obvious attack. He almost tripped when he was met with a lackadaisical image of a boy just barely in his teens. He wore a simple white t-shirt and orange shorts. On his feet were sandals, and wrapped sloppily around his neck was his headband. It showed that he was from the Hidden Leaf village. In his hands were a bunch of plastic bags. Vegetables and other produce poked out. Like everyone else in the village, he simply looked bored. The gusts coming from the area of the explosion were growing in power, and a purple gas that just had to be poison had started to seep out of the carnage. And yet, still, no one moved to do anything about it. It was perplexing. The boy tilted his head. The sound ninja hadn't even felt him land on the roof behind him. The boy was obviously skilled. He almost tripped once more when the boy started speaking. "I thought I told you guys to stop following me around." The Anbu chuckled, and for a second the sound ninja thought they sounded ashamed. "Well, you have, but we can't exactly disobey orders from the Hokage. He wants us to make sure that you don't break anything again." The boy, who was most definitely named Naruto, shrugged. His brows furrowed, but he looked more annoyed than anything. "I have never broken anything on purpose." The second Anbu laughed, but it was hollow. More to lighten the mood than anything else. "Well, no. We know that you never purposely do anything. But what?" The sound ninja had to know. It was the lead Anbu that spoke next. "You moved at speeds approaching light the other day when fighting the Fox Anbu." Naruto nodded. "I remember fighting my package." "Yes, quite. Well, fighting the Fox Anbu nearly destroyed the financial district. We're here to make sure you don't do it again." It was here that Naruto quirked an eyebrow, and for a second he even seemed excited. For every bit that the boy gained excitement, however, the Anbu seemed to grow a bit more fearful. The side Anbu put up their hands and warded off the boy's train of thought. "Of course, we aren't going to stop you by fighting you. Oh no! We're just going to solve your problems. For you?" They seemed scared, and their choice of action seemed more of a proposal than a certainty. Naruto seemed to be pondering their words. After a while he finally relented with a nod of his head. "Sure, I guess." He then turned, finally seeming to notice the wanton destruction happening in the background. "What's going on over there?" The two Anbu followed his gaze back to the war zone. One shrugged, while the other seemed to finally be calming down. "Dunno," the lead Anbu said. "We're only paid to make sure that you don't destroy the village. Everything else is a minor problem." Naruto nodded his head. He then walked off into the general direction of the explosions. The two ninja, of course, followed him. The sound ninja was left standing on the roof. His mouth opened and shut steadily, before finally he turned around. "I'm not even going to try. Of course the village that spawned Lord Orochimaru would have nothing but freaks in it." XXX Konohamaru flipped, before using the thrusters and his armbands to propel himself through the air. A slight movement of his thumb, and a mighty, though focused jet of flame sent him careening out of the way of a gust of wind. The ball of air went on to utterly decimate a tree, and for a second Konohamaru was relieved that he had practice in mid-air movement. The boy landed shortly after, and though he was out of breath, a smile crept its way onto his face. These two were strong, and it had been a while since he had met a worthy adversary. Everyone was either far too strong or seriously weak. These two were just the right amount of challenge. In front of him, emerging from the dust cloud whipped up from their attacks, was the blonde sand village girl. Her smile was predatory as she stalked out of the debris. Her clothing, which was a white get-up with a sand-colored rope tied around her waist, was now scorched along the edges. Her battle fan, which was now fully opened, did not fare much better. Fire had eaten holes into the fabric that made up the fan part, and even the metal was burned in places. No, the sand kunoichi did not look pleased. "You have went from cute to annoying, brat," she yelled. She swung her battle fan, but it was nowhere near as powerful as when they had started the fight. Konohamaru dodged the air blast easily. "I'm going to enjoy watching my wind carve you to pieces." Konohamaru smirked. He moved to engage, but something pinged in his awareness. Not one to doubt instincts, he turned and raised his arm. The poison needles from Makeup Man broke on his metal armbands. "Not bad, kid. I'll almost feel bad killing ya." The Makeup Man was a puppet user. His first puppet, a deranged-looking humanoid with 4 arms, was keen on poisons. It jerked erratically and spasmed every so often as Makeup Man waved it through the air in front of him on near-invisible chakra strings. "You're going to have to try harder if you want to kill me," Konohamaru shouted. He raised both arms, one pointed to either side of him, and flexed his fingers. Fire roared to life once more, but both sand ninjas were prepared for this by now. By the time that the inferno left his armbands, the sand girl had already swung her fan. His flames were buffeted by the wind and snuffed out. "Your fire isn't chakraborn, is it, brat?" the girl taunted. Konohamaru almost sneered at her. On the other side, Makeup Man wasn't doing any worse. His demented doll sprang in front of him and absorbed the worst of the fire. The wood was burned in places, but ultimately both he and his puppet were fine. "All you've got are fancy gadgets and no skill. You're not even a real shinobi." This time Konohamaru did snarl. Wasn't a real shinobi? He had worked hard to get where he was. He had trained years, slaving under harsh training regimens and the whims of Dr. Kusano. Not a real shinobi? Konohamaru crouched. His entire body tensed as the mechanical parts attached to his arms and legs shifted, the engines therein firing up. "I'll show you a real shinobi." The dirt road was scorched as fire erupted from both Konohamaru's hands and feet. He took to the air in less than a second, and soon he was less than a blur darting around the mid-afternoon sky. "What?" Kankuro gasped. He was struggling to hold his ground from the shockwave. "What's going on?" was all Tamari was able to utter before instinct told her to raise her fan. Konohamaru appeared at her side, phasing out of nothingness, and delivered a devastating spin kick. His foreleg hit the metal of her fan, and the clang that rang out lasted only a second before Tamari was sent flying away. She broke through the wooden fence around the clearing and out of sight before she could stop herself. "Tamari!" Kankuro shouted. He wanted to go help her, but Konohamaru wasn't done yet. He flexed his fingers, and fire erupted from his gadgets again. The boy phased out of sight once more. Kankuro was visibly dismayed. "Enough of your games, boy," Kankuro shouted. He swung his puppet in a circle around him. The puppet's mouth opened, and a sickly green mist bellowed out. "Let's see you get through this." Konohamaru proved that he could easily get through it. With a dynamic entry worthy of youth, the boy barreled through the poison clouds surrounding the sand ninja, spear kicked him in the back, and emerged on the other side in less than a second. Kankuro sputtered as he tumbled on the ground, his eyes rolling to the back of his head. Konohamaru panted. "I've done it." Both sand ninjas lay in their respected divots in the ground, firmly knocked out. He had finally done it. He had beaten full-fledged ninja. Feeling victorious, the boy raised his fist in the air. "I've done it," he yelled to the sky. He had taken his first step towards being a hero. So wrapped up in his victory, he didn't notice the mosquito land softly on his outstretched knuckle. It buzzed and tiptoed on his skin before flying away. It would have sucked some blood, but ultimately there was no reason. Sand constructs didn't need blood, after all. XXX, why do I have this overwhelming feeling that I should be somewhere right now? Sasuke asked, his eyes staring off into space. He had frozen mid-kata in the middle of the Hyuga dojo. Faintly, off in the distance and behind far too many walls, he could hear the screams of his comrades. "Dear Goddess, just let me die," came the unmistakable voice of Sakura. Her wails echoed throughout the halls and into the ears and souls of everyone around. "You're to blame, Sakura. My children and their children and their children's children will dog your descendants for every generation to come, I promise you this." That was definitely Hinata. Her voice wasn't as loud, but it was so assured and deadly. Like a spine-killing whisper in an empty room. Sasuke smiled. He continued his katas. No, this was exactly where he needed to be. The sound of the two most annoying women in his life suffering under both their own pettiness and the Hyuga doctors was all he needed in life. Written exams. Naruto sighed. His hands were holstered firmly in his pockets as he trudged through the halls. All around him were various people, some older, some younger, all buzzing about. Today was the first day of the Chunin exams, and all eligible ninja were to report to the academy building for testing. Eligibility was typically decided by the Jonin's higher-ranked instructor. Seeing as Naruto had no such instructor, he was sure that he would be able to get by this exam. That hope was dashed almost immediately. XXX Naruto stared at the Hokage, his face carefully impassive. Any overt emotions might make the already stressed-out Hokage snap. As it was, the old man was chugging on his pipe like some kind of human coal train. The wrinkles on his face were much more pronounced than usual, and his eyes were bloodshot. "You're participating in the Chunin exams," the old man said. Naruto shook his head. "No instructor," he said, and left it at that. Apparently the Hokage had foresaw such a conclusion, and from his desk he pulled a folder. It slammed on the desk, almost cracking the wood. "Your previous instructors have given you glowing recommendations," Sarutobi said. Gone from the statement was the fact that almost all of those recommendations were due to the fact that none of the instructors would have to deal with him when he was promoted. There was no doubt in anyone's mind on whether the little monster would be promoted. Naruto picked up the folder. He rifled through the papers therein and picked some out. The first one had a picture of a man that Naruto only faintly remembered. He was to teach Naruto ninjutsu. Totsuko lauded your ninjutsu as being extraordinary. The third Hokage almost looked proud, but even Naruto could see how forced it was. The Hokage was a man who didn't let many things past him, and even the most dense of children knew how abysmal Naruto's ninjutsu was. "The last jutsu I used exploded," the child said. Sarutobi nodded. "And quite spectacularly, as well. We are still cleaning up that training ground. I was trying to use a water jutsu. Your enemies will never expect the fiery explosion. I've never been one to chastise my soldiers for ingenuity." Naruto saw that he was getting nowhere with this. Instead he picked out another report. He vaguely remembered this man as his genjutsu teacher. He showed the recommendation to his commander. "I cannot use genjutsu." The Hokage took another puff on his pipe. "Nonsense. Ariaka is a trusted teacher. She would never lie. If she says that you are a genjutsu expert, then that is what you are. I have never completed a genjutsu in my life. Are you sure that you haven't cast a genjutsu on yourself to make you believe that?" "Truly impressive." Naruto grunted, but didn't press. The old man seemed intent on his own illusion. Trying one last time, he pulled out the picture of his most recent projectiles teacher. Here, the Hokage took the lead. "Ah, Kensuke. He said that you hit every single target with a single shuriken. Impressive, young Naruto." Naruto shook his head. "I hit not one target." The Hokage took a look at the paper. "Are you sure? It says here that you destroyed every single one." "Yes. I destroyed them all. The shuriken never actually hit them though." It just destroyed the landscape around it. Here the Hokage's pipe fell out of his mouth. The old man, skilled as he was, caught his pipe before it hit the ground. Still, his moment of shock was prevalent enough. He coughed once to catch himself, before turning to Naruto with as serious an expression on his face as he could muster. Well, the ends are more important than the means, it seems. Naruto stared at the older man. Never in his life has he ever heard the old man uphold such a dogma. Either way, you have been nominated to engage in this Chunin exam. Go and make our village proud. Naruto wanted to argue, but the old man was being stubborn. When he was like this there was no convincing him, and any further dissonance would put his food money in jeopardy. So instead he just nodded, snapped the chains holding him, and stood up. He took the contract allowing him entry and signed it, before turning to the door. He waved to an out-of-breath guy and made his way out of the tower. He had exams to study for. FXXX Naruto stepped around some people in the crowd. He could just bulldoze through them all, but he was told that was bad. I don't see why you don't want to do this. You wanted to be Hokage, didn't you? Naruto shrugged. The fox wasn't wrong, he did want to wear the giant triangle hat eventually. But there really isn't a reason anymore, is there? I wanted to be Hokage because I wanted everyone to respect me. To be Hokage, I needed to be stronger. I'm stronger now, and sure people respect me. But Naruto held out a hand. It wasn't a punch, or anything threatening even. He just held out his hand abruptly. Not nearly enough force to do anything but kick up a breeze, if that. The people around him all but threw themselves out of the way. Some tumbled to the ground, already in the fetal position. Others employed techniques and were far away. Some even jumped out the window. Naruto just stretched. A yawn soon followed. Everyone is afraid of me. There isn't anyone strong enough to even challenge me. Thinking about it, aren't I basically the Hokage already? For a while there was silence, and Naruto paced his steps as he made his way towards the assigned classroom. It wasn't until he climbed the stairs and turned into the necessary hallway that the QB answered. You don't have any authority. What if you need to order someone to do something? Naruto shrugged. He scratched his cheek as he answered. Well, when do you think I'll ever need to order someone to do anything? I guess it would be nice to make the supermarket stay open an hour later so that I don't miss any sales, but that seems like an abuse of power. What if you need someone to fight for you? When will I ever need someone to fight for me? The fox didn't have an answer to that, so the two enjoyed the silence for a bit longer. It wasn't long until Naruto reached the door to the classroom. He reached to open the door, when he was stopped. I see that you managed to get past the first test, an old, but amused voice said. I'm glad to see that you're not all muscle and no head. Naruto turned to find his landlady behind him. Her smile was all gums and her eyes twinkled as she stared at the boy. Naruto had grown since he had become a ninja, so instead of being twice his height, she came to just being a head taller. It wasn't a major improvement, but it was something. Naruto didn't respond to her taunt, no, instead he raised a fist. It soared through the air with no real power behind it, and the retired kunoichi dodged the attack with ease. Oh ho ho ho. The landlady cackled. Someone's testier than usual. Naruto didn't say anything. His blue eyes met the woman's slate gray, and his lips pursed as he tossed several more punches. The landlady dodged them with the ease of a practiced veteran, and she floated around the half-hearted punches like a leaf in the wind. Usually the Jonin instructor greets their students before the written test, but all of yours were indisposed. Naruto stopped his onslaught. He tilted his head as he looked curiously at his landlady. No one else wanted to come greet you, so they decided to bring an old lady out of retirement. Naruto reared a fist back. So good luck, okay child? Naruto, caught off guard, let his hand fall. He stared at the lady for a while longer, a full minute, in fact before nodding his head. The landlady chuckled, then rested her hand on his head. She ruffled his hair before vanishing. Naruto stared at the spot she left. Blue eyes beheld nothing but air as a whiskered face betrayed nothing. He stood in silence, allowing people to pass around him, for a couple seconds more before turning and walking into class. I thought that you couldn't trust anyone, kid? The fox asked. Naruto scoffed mentally. I don't trust her, he thought back. I just don't think she has any reason to betray me. XXX Naruto was a man of very many talents. He could sew a hole in his clothing shut in under a minute. He could cook one minute rice in 30 seconds. He could lift an entire mountain range and shift it 3 meters to the left. He could then destroy said mountain range, leaving naught but rubble and memories. Some of his accomplishments were more noteworthy than others. One thing that Naruto could not do, however, was read the future. As such, when he took that first step into the classroom where his written exam was to be, he was not ready to be bowled over by a mop of blonde hair. Naruto! Ino all but screeched. She had a vice grip around his neck as she literally nuzzled him into the ground. Naruto took one look at her and nodded. "Hi, Ino," he said. He patted her on the head before rising. She still hung off his neck, but that didn't seem to bother either of them. "How is my favorite socially awkward blonde?" she asked. Naruto nodded. "I'm fine. A bit hungry, but I guess that's my fault for not eating enough." "Yeah, I'm doing great too. I'm excited for the exams. We're gonna be Chunin," Ino babbled on, uncaring of what Naruto said. She was used to the blonde boy's almost silence. A little too used to it, in fact. She talked enough for the both of them regardless of whether he was talking. She continued her spiel for another uninterrupted minute before an exasperated hand dragged her back. "Sorry about this, Naruto," Choji said. With his bulky frame and powerful arms he easily held a now rabid Ino in the air. "She's been like this ever since team formations. She did this to Sasuke and Kiba as well." Naruto looked around. He easily ignored the fierce glares of the examinees from the other villages, only to focus in on the familiar faces. Sasuke and Kiba lay in almost broken heaps on the ground, likely from Ino's fatal glomp attacks. The blonde nodded as he looked back to the two. Ino was thrashing in Choji's arms, not that the rotund boy particularly cared. "It's good to see that you're still so lively," Naruto said. He didn't really mean it, but he didn't have anything else to say. "How are the rest of you doing?" Here Choji smiled. With seemingly no effort he cast Ino behind him. The girl shrieked in indignation, but otherwise landed gracefully. "I'm fine. Shika's doing well too. Ino Shikacho was remade in this generation, and we've all been learning under Azuma-sensei. How have you been?" Naruto shrugged. Not much had changed. He'd done missions, gained a package, and occasionally remodeled landscapes. So nothing new. He let Choji know this much. "Ha," Choji chuckled. "Things are always interesting with you, aren't they?" He casually held out a hand and clotheslined Ino mid-lop. She folded over his arm, out of breath but still conscious. She glared at her teammate. "Well, we have to get back to Shikamaru. If you need us, we'll be in the back. Just follow the sound of Shika's snoring." And like that the two were off, Choji carrying an irate Ino over his shoulder. Naruto cracked a small smile. They were interesting. He turned from them and made it exactly 2 more steps into the room before being tackled by a small dog. It yipped at him, before climbing to his head. The blonde didn't need to be psychic to know what was happening next. "Naruto. You blonde bastard. How are you?" Kiba, of course, accentuated his question with a punch. Naruto didn't bother with dodging. He let Kiba's hand bounce off of his forehead and nearly shatter. Kiba winced, and nursed his swollen knuckles, but otherwise didn't let his pain show. Naruto respected his resolve. "I'm fine," he answered. "I'm not entirely sure why I am here, but the old man made me come." Here Kiba was joined by his teammates, Hinata Hyuga and Shino Aburame. While the latter didn't say anything, the young Hyuga smiled. Naruto smiled back and waved at her. Kiba, however, latched onto the young man's words. "Wait, are you not excited to be here? If we pass these tests, we get to be Chunin. Isn't that so cool?" Naruto shrugged. "I dunno. I'm just doing this for fun. It's more of a hobby that pays than an actual job for me." The 3 ninjas of Team 8 looked at Naruto, faces blank as they took in the words. Kiba was the first to speak. "Being a ninja is a hobby to you?" he asked. Naruto shrugged. "Pretty much. It's something I do for fun. You fight bloodthirsty villains and risk your life every day." "For fun?" Shino asked. The lower part of his face was covered by the tall collar of his jacket, but one could somehow feel the boy's mouth hanging open. "I wouldn't phrase it that way," Naruto responded. "No one has been particularly challenging yet." Kiba and Shino just stared at the boy. Their eyes didn't leave the blonde for a full minute before, simultaneously and without any conversation, the two shrugged and turned to their seats. "Well, it was great seeing you, Naruto," Kiba said. Shino didn't say anything, but from his curt nod and waving hand it was apparent that the boy was done with the conversation. Hinata, however, ran up to the boy. She hugged the boy tightly, and though it wasn't anywhere near tight enough to register, Naruto faked coughing. If he didn't, the girl wouldn't relent. Even with his fake choking, it took the girl a couple minutes to ease up. When she did, she only allowed him breathing room. Before she fully let go, she leaned in to whisper in his ear. "When we're both Chunin, You'll be all mine again." Then she skipped off, a sudden extra bounce in her step. Naruto watched her go, waving all the while. "That one scares me," Kurama whispered, even though no one else could hear him. Naruto shrugged and turned, once more, into the room. "She's funny. She wants to mate you. You can't prove that. I can smell the pheromones. We're in a room full of teenagers. Of course you can." And the conversation ended there. X Sakura turned when she felt the strong presence enter the room. Naruto wasn't particularly strong mentally. No, he was one of the simpler minds. When she mastered telepathy, Naruto was the first that she tried to read. His thought process was exceedingly plain, and never more complex than immediate needs. No, his uniqueness lied with his presence. Everything she moved with her telekinesis pushed back against her mind, and certain things required more mental muscle. While things with minds that could resist her typically outweighed things that didn't, Sakura found that things that simply weighed more required more effort. To put it into context, a boulder would weigh more than a pebble, but a person would weigh more than a boulder twice their size. Still, a house would weigh more than that person regardless of how much they resisted. A house was simply too much. Naruto, however, was like 8 houses. He was like 8 houses and a mountain. And Sakura couldn't figure out why. She tried to push on him with all of her strength in passing, once. She demolished the field behind him, but she doubted Naruto noticed a thing. So yeah, whenever Naruto entered a room, she felt it. Subconsciously she pushed on everyone every time she entered a room, and most people didn't have the fortitude to resist. Naruto, however, pushed back. His very presence bulldozed through her ambient psionic energy, putting pressure on her mind and alerting her whenever he was near. Sakura took one look at him, saw Ino glomp him, and then turned to see Kiba recover from his fatal glomping to rush over to the blonde as well. With a sigh, the pink cat raised her hand and enveloped her saner partner in a film of psionic energy, restraining him. "What gives, Sakura?" Sasuke raged. Unlike Naruto, Sasuke was actually smart. His mind raced with thoughts and powerful emotions, and he pushed her intellectually. His mind raged against hers, but in the end she won out. Sasuke was caged. "I have to go say hi to Naruto." "Oh no," Sakura said. "I'm not having you interact with that ball of crazy any more than you need to." Sasuke struggled a bit more, but couldn't escape. Eventually he settled for simply glaring, and Sakura responded by glaring back. "Then how come Sai gets to go say hi?" he eventually asked. Sakura, caught off guard by the question, turned to see Sai making his way over. For some reason the boy just did not show up on her radar. "Damn it," Sakura groaned. X Sai stopped a good meter or so away from Naruto, said nothing, and made absolutely no sound in the exceedingly noisy room full of murderous teenagers. The blonde still turned the second that Sai stopped moving, and the two entered a staring contest with absolutely no prompt from either boy. They stood there, staring at each other, for almost an hour. A silver-haired boy walked up to them. He adjusted his glasses and attempted to brag about his cards. He was rebuffed when they ignored him. Sasuke eventually broke free and made it over as well. He, too, was sent away when the two didn't even break eye contact. Eventually Viki, a tall, imposing monster of a man entered, and started the test. He took one look at the boys, muttered "I'm not an idiot like guy," and continued the test around the two. Both Naruto and Sai ended up passing the written exam, and neither knew about it until the next day, when both boys nodded, turned, and went about their days. Neither have exchanged a single word with the other as of yet. "The Forest of Death, you all have 5 days to get the other kind of scroll," a lady yelled. She wore a trench coat, a fishnet shirt, and nothing else. Failure to do so results in an automatic disqualification from the Chunin exams. Naruto looked down at the scroll in his hands. It was like any other scroll he'd seen, just a piece of parchment rolled up. The band using to bind it, however, had a depiction of air, 3 lines curled at the end. "Pretty simple stuff, actually," the lady continued. "Have an air scroll? Get an earth scroll. Have an earth scroll? Get an air scroll. Get a usable pair, then get to the tower, and you win. Don't get a usable pair, you lose. Open the scrolls at any point, you also lose. Also, though this should go without saying, if you die, you lose." The lady then stopped in her ranting. She seemed pensive for a moment, and only a moment, before reaching inside her trench coat, somehow not revealing anything, and pulling out a large stack of paper. "Oh right, also, there's a totally big chance that you guys are gonna die in there. Big spiders, some tigers. Some big tigers. Whole bunch of stuff in there. I'm going to need you guys to sign these so that the Leaf Village doesn't get sued." Then, with far more enthusiasm than was necessary, the lady bounced around and handed out the liability forms. The children she handed them to looked alarmed, most likely by the casual threat of death, but they took the forms regardless. Team 7 was handed forms, as well as Team 8. The lady bounced about sporadically, handing forms to everyone she passed without rhyme or reason. She bounced from a team from the hidden sand to a team from the hidden rain. Then to the hidden rock and the hidden cloud. Just when it seemed like she was going to bounce to everyone involved, she stopped, headed back over to the middle, and stood with a smile on her face. "I trust everyone has their form? You can't get in without a form." Naruto raised his hand. "Speak up. If we find you entered without a form, you're disqualified on the spot." Naruto jumped in place. "No one? Everyone has their form and are ready to sign it?" The people surrounding Naruto nervously glanced his way as he fidgeted in place. The lady sighed. "Look, Naruto. You know who I am." The lady had a weary look on her face as she looked at the blonde Jinan. Naruto nodded. He remembered her as Anko, Snake Girl. "Very good," the Snake Girl said. "And I know who you are. Honestly, when the Hokage told me that you were entering, I tried to skip out on being the examiner. But, sadly, it was too late. There is no one who could pick up all the responsibilities I've been practicing." Anko then sighed again. "I don't know why you're here. I don't know why you're not off somewhere scaring boogeymen and terrorizing cities. I don't know why the boss man decided that it was a good idea to drop what amounts to an adolescent human bomb amongst children. All I know is that I'm trying to make things simple for me." Naruto nodded. He could understand the want for a simple life. "Now, I could give you a waiver. I could let you sign it and not be held responsible for whatever happens to you in that forest. If I do that, however, then I open avenues for people attacking you without repercussions. You and I both know that if you get attacked, bad things happen for everyone involved." Naruto shrugged. Nothing bad ever happened to him. "So no, that's not what we're doing today. If anything happens to the rest of these kiddies, their dead bodies will feed my babies in the forest. If anything happens to you, then there will be no more forest. There will be no training ground and no hidden leaf village. So you don't get a waiver. If anyone attacks you, then they will be answering to every Anbu on site. Oh right, by the way," Anko snapped her fingers. A trio of Anbu teams appeared around Naruto. "Not a trio of Anbu. A trio of the teams. We can't keep you from taking part in the exam, but we can keep you from getting in trouble." "But I don't want to take part in the exams. I don't even want to be here," Anko sighed. She was doing that a lot lately. "Okay, correction. We can't stop the Hokage from making you take part in the exams, but we can stop you from getting into trouble." Naruto nodded. That seemed about right. "Anyway," Anko said. She turned to the rest of the examinees. "For the rest of you, have you finished signing your forms? Good." She whipped around and snatched the forms from the Jinan, not caring whether they were done. Once she had them all, she snapped her fingers, and the various gates along the length of the metal fence surrounding the training ground opened. "Now get in there and prove yourselves. Fight dirty, gouge eyes, and remember to have fun." The Jinan rushed the gate, most of them looking wary about the situation that they just had to witness. Still, they shrugged it off and got to work, making sure to check their tracks as they charged into the forest that had trees bigger than their houses. As they continued into the forest, Naruto could only look at their backs. He shifted towards the Anbu holding him back, his name was Dragon, and raised an eyebrow. "Let them have a chance to set up traps and such," the Anbu murmured. His voice was gruff. Naruto noted this for future reference before turning back to Anko. "Do I have to go in there?" he asked. Anko's head swiveled so fast to him that he almost missed the movement. "I don't know," she responded. "Do you?" Naruto shrugged. "Do I?" And like that, everyone still outside the Forest of Death looked at each other. Naruto and Anko looked hopeful, and the prospects of just leaving the area dawned on them. Naruto could always just leave, foregoing the whole exam altogether, and no one would be able to stop him. He knew that, Anko knew that. Hell, even the Anbu knew that, and as one they all broke rank to allow Naruto to leave. The blonde was prepared to do just that when a voice rang across the village. It was aged, tired, and generally pissed. "If you don't take the second exam, I will personally make sure you never get to shop on discount at another store in this village again." And just like that, Naruto did a 180 and trudged towards the forest. The Anbu sighed, recognizing the voice of their leader, and followed the boy in. Anko collapsed on the ground, her strength finally leaving her. "So close," she whimpered. We were so close. XXX Sasuke ducked, his body shifting like flowing water as his fists flew forward to hit the massive tiger that pounced on him. 2 hits, then 3, and the tiger collapsed on the ground. Its eyes, which were about as big as half of Sasuke's torso, rolled to the back of the tiger's head as its tongue lolled out of its mouth. It wasn't dead, but at least it was out of the fight. Sasuke turned, ready to check on his teammates, when another tiger leapt from the bush behind him. Caught off guard, the young Uchiha was prepared to defend himself when yet another tiger rushed from behind and engaged it. The new tiger was black and white, however. "DCH, I didn't need your help, Sai." The Uchiha glared over his shoulder as he said it, at the pale boy standing just behind him. Said boy smiled, and boy was that a creepy thing, as his ink tiger tore into the real one. "From my perspective it seemed that you were in danger. Was I wrong?" Sasuke grit his teeth but didn't respond. The boy would misconstrue anything he said and likely had already come to his own conclusion. Instead, the Avenger simply rolled his eyes and turned back to the tiger. It was only one of the many in the tiger pack and they didn't have time to argue. Sasuke crouched his legs, before shifting into his personal stance. He waited for what he knew was coming. Sure enough, the real tiger soon overpowered Sai's Ink 1, and with a yell the Uchiha burst forward to combat it. Before he could engage, however, a blue film of energy enveloped it. The tiger seized up, its bones contracting in unusual ways. There were audible cracks and pops, before the tiger was forcefully whisked away into the tree line. Sasuke and Sai both stared at the direction it flew, before stopping and staring at one another. It seemed like Sakura was done playing around. Tigers, some more than 3 times Sasuke's size, were lifted from the jungle floor and carried through the foliage. There were screams, roars of pain, for just a moment before the jungle fell into silence. Sasuke looked to Sai. If she could do that, why did she wait all this time? He asked. For once Sai seemed genuinely confused. The pale boy shrugged his shoulders. The 2 boys waited a bit longer, and sure enough all signs of struggling ended. The brush rustled, and out came Sakura. She wore a disturbing smile on her face as she approached her boys. Sai, not knowing any better, smiled back. Sasuke, however, grimaced. He tried his hardest to avert his gaze and empty his mind, but the deed was already done. He had already seen her. "Did you have fun, boys?" Sakura asked. Her smirk was telling. She waved a hand as she approached, drawing Sasuke's eyes to it. She then placed it on her hip, which of course drew his attention to her exposed thigh. Sasuke felt the blush coming on. He tried to suppress it, he really did, but the telepath had already sensed his emotion. Her smirk grew. "Don't waste our time if you could just wipe them out," Sasuke said through clenched teeth. He had averted his gaze, but even he knew it was too late. Sakura was now firmly in his mind. No one knew the reasoning behind it, but Sasuke felt like he had a pretty good idea. Sakura had changed her clothing from her red shipao dress and black shorts, to a form-fitting red leather dress. While it covered her entire upper body, including her arms, as it draped downwards it cut off, showing an ample amount of leg. Most just thought that Sakura was embracing her kunoichi training, but Sasuke knew better. Sakura could read emotion and thoughts. She knew when she flustered others. Sasuke knew that she just enjoyed teasing her peers. Sakura's knowing gaze was irritating. She didn't respond to his taunt, but then again she also knew that he was only saying it to change the subject. With a massive amount of effort, the boy tried to push the psychic out of his head. He had middling luck in doing so. Luckily, however, he needn't worry. Sai walked up, all business and no emotion, and spoke. The instant he did, Sakura's attention turned to him, and she didn't like what she saw. "Now that the danger has passed, we should get moving." Sasuke nodded, but Sakura just stared at the pale boy. Her brow furrowed as she kept her eyes on him. She stayed that way for 5 seconds more, before nodding and turning away. "Lead the way," she said, letting Sai take point. The pale boy had no problems with it, leaving Sasuke and Sakura to follow. Sasuke took one look at his pink-haired teammate and smiled. "Still can't read him?" Sakura asked. "I can read him just fine. It's just that there isn't anything to read. No thoughts, no emotions, nothing. It's like cutting someone open and finding, not blood, but an empty, limitless void." Sakura shuddered. "It's creepy," Sasuke chuckled. He placed a hand on Sakura's shoulder, but did nothing else to comfort her. Being on this team sucked, but at least it was entertaining sometimes. XXX Dragon was a legend amongst the Hidden Leaf villages on Bukor. He had a confirmed successful mission rate of 100%. His marks were always collected and his charges were always protected. He balked at the sight of none, even those stronger than him, and if he would die, he would do so in a heartbeat for his nation. Dragon, the leader of the Konohamaru, was truly the perfect soldier. He fought both odds and enemy every time he woke up in the morning and fought those same odds to sleep at night. His life was saturated with blood to the point that he couldn't remember a moment where he hadn't walked amongst death. But here? Now? Right now Dragon wanted to retreat. He wanted to crawl back to his bed and stay there. Grow-o-o-oo-ow, the very act of roaring felled trees taller than the tallest buildings in the village. The earth cracked as fissures spread through the forest floor, and creatures both large and small fled from the creature's casual challenge. To their credit, Dragon's loyal subordinates hadn't fled. Some retrieved weapons, kunai, short swords and the like, while others prepared techniques. None fled, however, and for that Dragon was grateful. If they had fled, however, then perhaps Dragon could have fled as well. For that, he vowed to put them all through the most rigorous self-preservation training he could muster if they survived. The beast, a nearly 100-foot-tall tiger, simply glared at them. Its paw, from which sported a claw that could tear buildings asunder, dwarfed every single one of them. Its fur, from sight alone, could likely absorb any attack thrown at it, and even its tail battered trees as it lazily moved through the air. The creature lumbered forward, and even that was threatening. As its massive paw dragged it forward, its gargantuan frame brushed aside yet more trees. The legendary tigress, Nakamata, had found them, and none of the Anbu had any doubt in their mind on whether they would make it back home. "Soldiers," Dragon said. His voice was calm and silent. He couldn't shout his orders, for any sudden movement could set off the apex predator that even now stalked towards them. "I know that I rarely ever compliment you, but I want you to know that it is because I believe actions speak louder than words. By staying by my side, you have told me of both your loyalty and integrity. I just want to say that it was an honor serving as your captain." His subordinates didn't reply. The Anbu squads, 3 of them, did not respond to their leader's words. Some tightened their grips on their weapons, while others said short prayers. But none moved. None responded. No words were needed. "On my order." Dragon started, only to be interrupted. Their charge, one Naruto Uzumaki, adjusted his pants as he emerged from the brush. His bathroom break now over, he could focus on things other than relieving himself. He took one look at his guards, then followed their gaze to the towering behemoth. His eyes brightened considerably. "Kitty," was all he said, and for a second the Anbu had to stop mentally making their last wills. They turned from the monstrous cat in front of them to gape at the boy whose smile couldn't possibly be any bigger. "What?" Naruto pointed at the tiger, whose limited intelligence allowed it to understand human speech, and beamed. "That's a kitty. The old man said that I couldn't have any pets because they wouldn't survive, but that's a kitty, and it's big. There's no way he'll say no to that." And just like that, the boy rushed ahead. He tunneled through the Anbu ranks like a bull through paper and closed the distance between himself and the monster cat. The Anbu, suitably confused, could only watch as 2 titans clashed. Triple X Sasuke pivoted on the branch as the snake man closed in. 1 strike, then 2, and the snake sage Orochimaru glided once more into his guard. Sasuke cursed, and moved his kunai to intercept the older man's, when Sakura's psionic grip took a hold of the man once more. The pale Sardine seized as he struggled against his female teammate's hold, and Sasuke took that moment to gain some ground. My, what interesting little bugs I've found." The snake sage's voice was somehow both lilting and dangerous. He spoke with casual grace, as if he didn't find any of the 3 children threatening at all. It was likely he didn't. "What do you want, freak?" Sasuke spat. He didn't have time for this. It was only the first day of the exam, and already was a monster gunning for their head. "What do I want?" Orochimaru asked. His words were, terrifyingly enough, almost salty, and his freakishly long tongue moved independent of Sakura's hold. "Oh, no. I think we should be more accustomed to what you want." Sasuke frowned at the man's words. What he wanted. "I want to get out of this forest. I want to pass the Chunin exams. I want to avenge my clan. More than all of that, however." Sasuke brandished a second kunai. "I wanted to get away from your freaky ass." The snake sage chuckled, and boy was it creepy. Shivers traveled down Sasuke's back as the man spoke. "Interesting. Very interesting. You are on the right path, boy." Here the snake flexed, and Sakura's psionic hold faltered. The blue light outlining the man shattered like glass, and out of the corner of his eye Sasuke saw Sakura flinch. "But to do all of that, you're going to need power. Can you attain it?" Sasuke ducked a knife thrown by the man. It skimmed his cheek, and blood spilled from the line it cut. He didn't have time to dwell on it, however, as the snake was on him immediately. Blades clashed and sparks flew as the two ninja dueled it out, but eventually Sasuke was overpowered. The snake pushed him off balance, and in his moment of weakness he was kicked square in the chest. Sasuke tumbled off the tree, hitting the ground in a roll. He tried to get up, but a foot pinned him to the ground. Pathetic, Orochimaru crooned, that same annoying smirk on his face. The pressure on Sasuke's chest increased, and the boy could feel his breath hitch. All those years growing up in Konoha and you're still so weak. Sasuke snarled. His Sharingan spun in his eyes as he glared at the man above him. He was not weak. He was working towards his strength. He was working towards his power. He was stronger than most others in his age group and would only continue to grow. He tried to get up, and for a moment he managed to inch off the ground, but the Sannin wasn't impressed. A quick stomp sent the boy crashing back down to the earth and his breath barreling out of him. "You have fire, boy," the snake said. "But it is wasted in Konoha. This village makes ninja. It makes heroes. But those are paltry. Barely worth the paper that they inscribe their names on. You can grow strong as a hero, boy, but you will never reach your full potential." The snake raised its arm. "No, to truly be powerful, to truly make your dreams come true, you must be more than a hero. You must be more than human." To Sasuke's horror, the man's arm then split. A wet squelching sound echoed through the forest as his arm dissolved into a gaggle of snakes. They coiled and hissed amongst one another as they writhed from their previous form as the man's arm, and soon they all turned, in tandem, to glare with slit eyes at him. "Your brother was more than just a human, boy. He was a paragon of his kind, and his strength bypassed any that average ninja could attain to. His name was whispered in fear amongst the common folk as legend. His enemy spoke his name in reverence as monster." Sasuke's eyes narrowed as he thought on the man's words. That was true. His brother was no less than a monster both in battle and otherwise. My teacher, the third Hokage, while human, was a monster of his kind as well. He destroyed many an army by his lonesome. And me? Well, you can see what kind of monster I am. Sasuke flinched as the snakes that made of the freak's arm snapped at him at once, as if on command. The man laughed at his discomfort, before drawing the snakes back. "My point is," the man continued, "that you are still just a boy. You can grow as much as you want, and be as powerful of a human as you desire, but you will never sit on the same threshold as the monsters. If you want to be truly strong, strong enough to face your brother, you are going to need the strength of a monster." The man then leaned forward. His yellow eyes seemed to glow. "I can give you that power, Sasuke. All you are going to need to do is you get away from him." An angry voice screamed. What could only be described as a roar reverberated off the tall trees of the Forest of Death. A branch, abnormally large and about the size of a car, hurtled through the air at the two. The snake, eyes only slightly amused, didn't even dodge. His snakes simply expanded to entangle the branch as if it were simply a stick. "And I thought you were out for the count, girl," the snake hissed. Sakura responded by glaring. She stood on an opposite branch from the two, though standing was a relative term. She was panting heavily, and her knees wobbled as she spent what remained of her strength just to remain upright. "You failed to overpower me with your psychic abilities, and now you failed to save your friend. You really are a failure, aren't you?" Sakura hissed. She raised her hands as she channeled her psychic abilities once more. The branch currently being held by the snake crunched as she forced it against the man's grip. "I am many things," Sakura yelled. "But I am no failure. I know about monsters, and I know that it is our job to protect the people from them. You might be strong, but you are only strong in your evil. I will eradicate you and your kind from my world, and I will keep you from my friend." The snake, amused at her words, chuckled. "Big words, girly, but for all your talk you can overpower me. You can barely even stand. What makes you think that you could stop me?" Here Sakura smiled. Sweat fell down her large forehead like waterfalls, but still she struggled to push the branch just a little further. The man's hold was resolute, and barely faltered under the girl's psionic push, but still she tried. "Because I am human. And we humans persevere." The snake laughed. It wasn't a good sound. It was grating and scratchy and putrid all at once. It sent shivers like used oil down Sasuke's back. "Then persevere, girl. I would like to see how long you can hold on to that hope." And, as if he weren't trying at all, the snake broke the psionic hold on the branch in his hands. With pure might alone he overpowered Sakura, and Sasuke could only watch as the easily 1 ton of wood flew towards his pink-haired teammate. Concentration broken, Sakura couldn't wield her powers in time to catch the projectile. and it slammed through her perch and her without even slowing down. Sasuke was screaming before he even realized it. His arms, once drained of any power, clawed at the leg, pinning him to a branch. "You fiend! You asshole! You monster!" Sasuke howled. His teeth gnashed as he glared at the man who even now grinned smugly down at him. "Yes, I am a monster, but I am also the monster that dispatched you and your team by himself. Your efforts have been, and will always be, useless before me." Sasuke, though hearing the man's words, couldn't care less about them. He thrashed against his restraints as his nails dug into the man's skin. It didn't seem to bother him, however. The snake simply stood there, eyes alight in dark amusement. "Your team is gone, there is no one left to restrain me." The snake then opened his mouth. Sasuke wasn't surprised to see that the man's maw was like a snake's as well. Not that there was any to begin with. "I am Lord Orochi, the king of the monsters, and soon you will be amongst my kind as well. You should consider yourself lucky. You will soon be a subject of the strongest being in existence." And it was here, with doom impending, that Sasuke found some small light in the dark situation. A small, impish grin grew on his face as he thought of the last words to spit in the man's face. Strongest being? I wouldn't know about that. Orochimaru stopped right before his teeth sunk into the boy's neck as he listened to his words. "I'm pretty sure Itachi would give you a run for your money." The king of the monsters bristled, but otherwise didn't respond. Sasuke kept talking. "But even without him, I know for a fact that there is another whose power you could never rival. So-called king of the monsters, you are no match for Naruto. He is a beast beyond even your imagination." To this, the snake laughed. His stomach chortled with pleasure. Naruto? That brat? And what could he possibly? The forest quite literally exploded as the body of Nakamata, the legendary giant tiger, went flying through the tree of the forest of death. A wave of destruction followed in its wake, and the tiger cat, to its credit, was only slightly unconscious. From the dust of the debris came the very person of question. Naruto stalked into the, admittedly new, clearing with his fist outstretched and smoking. He didn't look the slightest bit exhausted. Behind him his Onbu guard were staring with mouths agape, though how anyone knew that through their full face masks was improbable. Though, looking at the damage so casually caused, that was probably the most accurate assumption. "So you survived," he said, voice a combination of excitement and nonchalance. "You can definitely be my pet." The Snake King of the Monsters and Lord Orochi just stared at the casual amounts of wanton destruction. He then turned back to Sasuke, only to see a resigned stare. "That's what he could do," Sasuke said. He then turned his head. "Hey, Naruto." Naruto, whose hearing was unnaturally good, turned. "Hi Sasuke. Wanna help me out?" Sasuke asked. He gestured to the snake Sannin above him. "Not particularly, no." Naruto responded. He then turned back to his potential pet. Sasuke had to resist the urge to facepalm. He forgot that he would have to convince the boy. "Why is this day so long?" the boy asked himself as he prepared himself for an annoying conversation. "Lord Orochi, dear gods, Naruto. Just help us," Sasuke shouted. His teeth ground together as he tried to convince Naruto what should have been common sense. There doesn't need to be a reason for everything. A friend is asking you to do something, so do it. Naruto rolled his eyes. "Yes, I know." Sasuke stopped. His mouth moved, open and closed, for a few seconds before he managed to get words out. "So you understand what I'm saying?" "Yes. I'm dense, not stupid. I know that you're likely in trouble." Hope bubbled in Sasuke's heart. "So you're going to help?" Naruto turned back to the giant, mostly unconscious, monster cat. "No." Sasuke sputtered, an action that was only partly because of the foot that was still pushing him down into a branch. "What? But you just said." "I said that I understood your situation. Not that I'd help you. I still have a pet to tame." And with that, the boy turned away from Sasuke and the Sannin. He paced towards the giant tiger with a determined look on his face. The cat, who was struggling to stay awake, glared defiantly back, but even it knew who was the greater amongst the two of them. Naruto stopped mere feet away from his new pet, and opened his mouth to speak, only to be showered in a spray of blood. Naruto gaped. The Onbu guards, who had just caught up, gaped. Sasuke turned, eyes wide and face incredulous, to the man standing over him. Orochimaru licked his blade, which was now shrinking down to a normal size, before cackling. "All lesser monsters bow before me. Nakamata is impressive, but she is nothing compared to my magnificence." Naruto hadn't responded. He ignored the snake man as he walked forward to place his hand on the cut running along the great tiger's neck. The life slowly drained out of her eyes, before her eyelids slowly fluttered closed. Naruto's head fell as he silently mourned the loss of his almost pet. Sasuke, however, clawed even more fervently at Orochimaru's leg. "What have you done?" the boy gasped. Orochimaru's yellow-slit eyes darted back to his prey. "Why, I am simply helping you, Sasuke. You wanted his attention, no? Well, now we have it." "I didn't want it like this," Sasuke yelled. His hands clutched at his head as he softly whimpered. "We're all gonna die." "Oh, stop now," Orochimaru said. "He can't be that bad." The Anbu squad, as a side, took one look at the situation and decided that it was above their pay grade. "We're retreating," the Anbu dragon said. "If the boss wants this situation handled, he can handle it himself." The three Anbu squads then promptly used the teleportation technique to blur away. The clearing then fell into a silence, from which no living creature dared to make a sound. This silent vigil continued for several minutes before, finally, someone got fed up. That someone was Orochimaru. "So are we just going to stand here or mine?" "Pardon me?" Orochimaru asked. He stared at the blonde boy who even now didn't deign to turn to him. Instead, he had his arm outstretched and his finger pointed at the king of monsters. "Mine," the boy repeated. "You took my pet away from me, so you are going to be the replacement." "I beg your pardon," was all Orochimaru got out before the boy simply appeared beside him. The king of monsters had less than a millisecond to understand what was going on before a swung fist sent him careening through several trees and halfway across the forest. Sasuke stared in horror at the blank fury on the boy's face. "Mine," Naruto repeated, before jumping off in pursuit of the legendary ninja. XXX Sakura's head was spinning. Her entire body ached from her place beneath broken tree debris, and she had a headache that sent her entire skull throbbing. But she was alive. She was still breathing. She hadn't the concentration to catch the tree branch that was flung at her. Her mind was dazed from when the snake Sannin first broke her hold on the branch. As such, she couldn't catch the projectile before it hit her, but she managed to throw a shield around her body. It protected her from the brunt of the impact, and then most of the impact of falling to the forest floor. She survived the encounter, but there was no way she made it out unscathed. "Holy kunai," the young girl groaned. She was sure at least 5 different parts of her body had a broken something in it. She could barely move without pain flaring somewhere and sending 1,000,001 sensations to her already addled mind. It was so overwhelming that she decided to just rest where she was. Then an explosion happened, and Sakura realized that she wouldn't have the time to do such a thing. The pink cat tried to raise herself from the ground, but the sheer amount of foliage on her was massive. The branch broke many other branches and parts of trees as it followed her down, and while it didn't land on her directly, a lot of the broken debris did. The pressure weighing her down wasn't oppressive, but it wouldn't allow her to get up very easily, and her shattered psyche wouldn't be able to lift it all on her own. Sakura slowly lowered herself back down. Her head rested against a rock, but it wasn't so bad. At least she wasn't dealing with what was happening out there. Her body started to feel cold, and her eyes slowly closed against her wishes. She felt tired, so very tired, and maybe, she thought, she could rest for a bit. "Naruto!" She heard her saner teammate scream, and her eyes snapped open. No. There was no way that he was here. "Help me," Sasuke roared. No. There was only one person who Sasuke would reliably ask for help. Desperately, the pink cat reached out mentally in order to assess the situation. One person was hopeful. They were also prideful. That was Sasuke. One was haughty. They, too, were prideful. Most likely the snake. One was a dark emptiness, completely devoid of any emotion, thought, or any semblance of being. This person made Sakura frown as she felt her own being sucked into the bottomless and ravenous void that was this person's emotional spectrum. That was Sai. Sakura wondered where he got off to. And, finally, there was one last person. They weren't so empty, but they were simple. Anger. Taken. Revenge. Kitty. Pet. Mine. No fear from being in the presence of a Sannin. No doubt in his ability. Just pure, simple, one-minded determination. Naruto had descended onto the battlefield. Sakura pushed herself harder. She had to get out of here. Sakura, past the pain, pushed against the debris trapping her on the ground. She tried to flex her powers, but it was to no avail. Her head felt like it was splitting in two, and her nose started to bleed. She collapsed back to the ground but didn't stay there. She had to escape. If Naruto destroyed a part of the village for such a weak enemy as the slime monster, she didn't want to see what he did to someone as strong as the snake Sannin. She didn't even want to think about why he was so angry. "Come on," Sakura grunted. Her broken bones pushed against her organs as she struggled with the branches. "Come on." It was as she was pushing that a hand came down and pulled with her. She looked up to see Sasuke, battered and bruised but still alive, looking back down at her. "I knew you were alive," Sasuke said. "You survived Naruto's punch. A little branch like that couldn't kill you." Sakura almost smiled at the jibe. There were bigger things happening right now, however. She worked together with Sasuke and managed to get most of the debris off her. Slipping out was just a matter of flexibility at that point, which she was easily capable of. Sasuke wasted no time in slipping her arm over his shoulder, before helping her limp off in the opposite direction of where she sensed Naruto go. "I know you could sense them. I felt your power brush against my mind." "You were scouting," Sasuke said. Sakura nodded. "We need to go. Naruto is pissed and I don't want to be in the same part of the world he's in when he explodes." Sakura nodded. Together the two limped away to what they hoped was the outskirts of the Forest of Death. Screw the Chunin exams. Better to live to gain the title another day. XXX Lord Hokage. An Anbu member screamed. Here scream is a relative term, because Anbu members were never frantic. Rather, the Anbu spoke slightly louder than usual, a fact that drew Hiruzen's attention immediately. "What is wrong, Ferret?" the Hokage asked. He set down his pen and sat up in his chair. A part of his mind realized that this was one of the soldiers that he sent to watch Naruto, but the urgent tone overrode that concern. "The snake Sannin Orochimaru has been sighted in the Forest of Death, sir." The Anbu, for all his training, seemed to shake. "He has been engaged by Jonin Naruto Uzumaki and wait," Hiruzen said. He had bolted out of his chair at the mention of his wayward student, but something stopped him. He slowly set down his staff and returned to his seat. "Repeat that." Ferret hesitated. He didn't like the look in his leader's eye. He repeated himself anyway. "The snake Sannin Orochimaru has been seen, no?" Hiruzen said. He had a hand massaging his temple now. "I got that part. What about after it?" "He has engaged Jonin Naruto Uzumaki there," Hiruzen said. "That part. He engaged Naruto?" The Anbu stuttered. "Yes, sir," Hiruzen sighed. He let his head fall into his hands as he let the words rattle around in the Anbu's head. He gave Ferret a whole minute to dissect his own words, then another to prepare himself for the disappointment. "So do you understand?" "Understand what, sir?" And then his head fell back into his hands. The old ninja rubbed at his temples before reaching for his pipe. He didn't know that it was going to be one of those days, but he supposed that it was his fault for not suspecting. "Orochimaru is in the forest," Hiruzen said. His voice was level as he said it. "Yes, sir. And so is Naruto." "That is correct, sir. And you saw fit to come inform me." "Why exactly?" "Because we need someone to take care of the traitorous Sannin," the Anbu reported. "There is no one strong enough in the village besides you. And run by me who is in the jungle again?" The Anbu, once more, hesitated. He could sense the ire in the Hokage's mannerisms. "Orochimaru. And Naruto Uzumaki." "Yes, quite." The old man started stuffing his pipe with tobacco. "And you said that Naruto was slighted by my wayward student, no?" "Yes." Ferret responded. "Well, I feel like the problem is going to sort itself out, then." Ferret made to respond, but the second he opened his mouth an earthquake shook the foundations of the village. Screams of pain that sounded eerily reminiscent of a snake hissing could be heard from the general direction of the testing grounds. That can't be," Ferret whispered. "I heard he was strong, but by this point I've accepted that there are some things in this life that I'll never understand." He leaned back in his chair. A small fire-style technique was enough to light his pipe. He took a deep drag before finally swiveling his chair around. His office overlooked most of his village, a sight that included the Forest of Death. He stared fondly at it. "I had planned to teach Orochimaru a lesson myself, but it seems like some problems really are best left to the next generation." Another explosion sounded through the village. It shook the foundations of the building and rattled the glass of the Hokage's window. The Anbu stumbled as the shockwave hit him, but Hiruzen, being as old and wizened as he was, foresaw the whole event and picked up his cup of tea before it could be displaced. He waited until the tremors stopped to take a sip. The green tea, with 2 lumps of sugar, was the perfect temperature to enjoy. "Ferret?" the Hokage asked. The Anbu member snapped to attention. "Yes, sir? Do me a favor. Go and survey the battle taking place between my wayward student and young Naruto. If he survives, come and get me." The Anbu swallowed the spit in his mouth. "By he do you mean Naruto or?" "I mean Orochimaru." Hiruzen cut in. "Now be off." Not one to disobey a direct order, even one that placed him in such immediate danger. Ferret scurried off. The Hokage watched as he left, then turned his attention back to his window. Naruto must be really upset to make a dust cloud that huge, Hiruzen mused. He sipped his tea in time with the tremors and silently hoped that his village would survive the encounter. "XXX, what is going on?" Orochimaru screeched. His clothes were battered and disheveled, and his normally shiny hair was an absolute mess akin to a bird's nest. His right arm currently hung limply at his side, the bones broken beyond use, and the muscles in his legs were so overused that it hurt to move at all, let alone at the speed he currently needed to. All in all, he had some serious problems that needed immediate attention. None of them could be attended to, however. If he stopped, even for a second, a 5-foot-tall nuke would obliterate him from existence. "Stop moving," the Uzumaki mumbled. His blue eyes were dull as he blipped from existence once more. Orochimaru, having already seen this, been through it, and had the broken bones to show for it, didn't stop to look around. He channeled as much chakra as he could to his feet and blurred away. The instant he did so, the tree that he was standing on ceased to be. It didn't break apart. It didn't vaporize. It simply ceased to be. Orochimaru wasn't sure how he felt about such things. "I said stop moving," Naruto said. His voice was a low drone as he stared directly at where Orochimaru landed. His fist, pulled back from a punch, sat holstered near his side. Orochimaru almost gaped as he saw that there wasn't even smoke from the attack left emanating from it. The boy simply stood there. "Would I do that?" Orochimaru asked. He tried to keep his voice as lilting as it normally was, but even he could hear the ambient fear in it. He tried to swallow the trepidation, but... well, there was still a section of the ground from where Orochimaru just narrowly dodged a stomp that was simply missing. The resulting hole went down farther than Orochimaru cared to test. Honestly, the snake Sannin was starting to feel as if he was in over his head. Naruto wasn't feeling the same. Fear didn't exist in him. He pointed at Orochimaru, scowled for good measure, and said, "You took my pet, so you must pay for it. Servitude or blood, I don't care which." Naruto clenched his fist. "But you will pay for it." Scratch that, the snake Sannin was definitely over his head, here. The amount of bloodlust leaking out of the boy was palpable. Subtly, the snake Sannin raised his one good arm to prepare a mud clone to distract the little freak. That arm was snatched away. Orochimaru didn't even feel it happen. 1 second he was preparing an attack, the next he could see his arm being crushed by the blonde boy. To his credit, the king of monsters did not wail. He took his dismemberment like a champion and simply stared at the stump where his arm used to be. "I suppose I should have expected that," he said. In his mind, he knew that no one would blame him for not suspecting that his arm would be swatted off like a twig off a branch, but with the way the day had been going he expected more of himself. Naruto hadn't responded to the witty banner. In fact, he hadn't responded to anything that Orochimaru had been saying the entire fight. He frowned when Orochimaru had tried to shed his old body for a new one, and then pulled the man out of the husk of his broken body by the neck, before breaking him all over again. That had been the only time that the boy emoted, however, and it taught Orochimaru not to use the technique again. So his body was broken, he had no way to repair it, and no way to escape. Vilp. Go for broke. 8 branches technique. XXX Naruto was expecting a lot of things from the creepy man. He was expecting some sort of laser eye beams, now that the man had lost access to its arms. He was expecting some kind of advanced kicking style of fighting. He was expecting, maybe, some kind of tongue attack? He certainly was a fan of using it early in the fight. He wasn't expecting the man to explode into a mass of wriggling white snakes. Naruto, caught off guard by the sheer absurdity of it, was washed away by the river of scales. By the time he righted himself, the monstrous creature was done forming. Orochimaru was no longer a creepy man with a penchant for hissing. He was now a creepy 8-headed monster snake giant. With hair. Ah ha 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 ha, the monster cackled. It spoke from all 8 of its heads, creating an odd surround sound effect. "Fool. You have pushed me to use my true form. Nothing can defeat me as I am now." Naruto stared up at it. He wondered how the man controlled all 8 heads at once. "My scales are impenetrable, my chakra unending, and my strength unmatched." The monster then swung its 8 tails, felling countless trees in the process. "I think it's a hive mind situation," the Kyuubi supplied. He was watching the scene from within Naruto's head, and he was just as mystified. "No, no," Naruto said. "Then the heads would be moving the same as well. See? Some are wriggling left, while some are wriggling right." No hive mind. And now, I will show you my power. You will never overcome him. Naruto snatched the head from the monster's neck. It wriggled in the air for a second before collapsing to the ground in a lifeless tremor. Naruto dropped the dismembered head, which was bigger than his body, and grimaced as its eyes rolled to the back of its head. "All right, couldn't hear myself think," Naruto said while dusting himself off. "Now what were you saying, Fox? Do you think he practiced?" Naruto shook his head. "No, more like it's something that may have become instinctual." "No." The monster roared. "I will not be bested like this. I am the ultimate warrior." And then, in a maneuver that neither boy nor Fox expected, the monster regrew its head. The creature made disgusting slick noises as the new head grew from the stump of the old one, before roaring its victory to the world. "I am Orochimaru, and I am perfection," it roared. It turned its attention back to Naruto, only for the boy to rip 3 heads off this time. The 3 heads collapsed to the ground, forming a morbid ring around the boy. Naruto stared at it. "Well, that's interesting enough." The monster roared. "I will be respected." And without ceremony, the creature swung its 8 tails, catching Naruto in the tree he stood on, and causing the biggest earthquake yet. "XXX, what was that?" Sakura screamed. The ground fell, then rushed up to meet her, easily wrenching her out of Sasuke's grip and back onto the ground. The Uchiha wasn't much better. He stayed upright for the first tremor and fell for the second. "Is that Naruto?" Sasuke asked. The tremors didn't grow any weaker, rather, they seemed to have grown stronger. "Can you check, Sakura?" The pinkette didn't respond. Instead, she closed her eyes and attempted to concentrate amidst the earthquake. Her mind wandered, moving through the forest to where the two were fighting, only to be repelled once she got within range. "I can't," Sakura hissed through grit teeth. "They're too strong. The sheer power in the air isn't allowing me to get through." Sasuke muttered a curse. He braced himself against a tree to weather the next quake and, when it subsided, he wasted no time in scooping Sakura off the ground. "Then we keep moving. The farther away we get from them the better." Sakura nodded, not being need to be told twice. "Get away from the fighting freaks? Sign her up." The two limped away from catastrophe together. Hopefully they would survive the forest. Whatever was happening over there was sure to be a fight of epic proportions. XXX Orochimaru wailed as, once again, Naruto severed a head from its body. The boy's face was emotionless as he tossed the dismembered appendage away. The monster tried to retaliate, but in doing so only hurt itself. Its tails whipped around to catch the boy who was standing on its back, but the boy leapt into the air. The remaining tails managed to catch him, but the impact broke the bones in those tails. Naruto, now sent careening through trees, didn't seem any worse for the wear. He emerged from the crater he was smacked into with just as much boredom as when he first started the fight. What are you?" Orochimaru said around ragged breaths. He had had to regenerate many heads from the brat's onslaught, and none of them ever managed to last for very long. He was running out of chakra very quickly, causing his transformation to weaken. Soon he would be little more than a collapsed mess. Naruto, for that matter, was not perturbed. He wasn't even tired. He cocked his head and stomped his feet and just stared. Gone was the glare and the anger, replaced by cold indifference. "I'm a ninja for fun," was his response. He didn't wait for Orochimaru's next words. "And you're boring me. I wanted you to be my pet snake, but you're too unruly. I'm going to have to put you down." Orochimaru bristled at that. He disregarded the fact that he was being trounced to litter with 8 pairs of eyes. "You? Put me down? What nonsense say? Serious series, serious punch." XXX the Chunin hopefuls all scurried to the ends of the lines, either inching or fully hiding away from the orange monstrosity that stood nonchalantly in the middle of the arena. The only ones stupid enough to stand near the boy were Kiba and Sasuke, and even then they didn't quite stand next to him. "That was you making all that noise, wasn't it?" Kiba all but demanded. He practically rode the boy with how much he leaned on him. "Of course it was him," Sasuke responded. "No one else is that stupidly overpowered." The rest of Naruto's class just stared at them. Hinata was trying to inch closer, but she was rebuffed by Shino. "Are you going to confess?" the bug boy asked. "No." "Then leave him be." Naruto, amongst all this, was trying his hardest to ignore everyone. Orochimaru had been an interesting fight. Not the most exciting that honor belonged to Guy, but an interesting fight anyway. He wouldn't let his classmates get him down. So this was what greeted Hayate as he entered the arena. A bunch of children either squabbling or trembling at the sight of a single, short boy. To the man's credit, he didn't even look twice. He looked to the paper in his hand and started on his practice speech. After several moments of starting, stopping, and starting over again, he just tossed the script and ad-libbed. Too many children made it through the death forest, he said. I'm not sure how, with the localized earthquakes, but you did. In order to even the odds, we decided to do a preliminary tournament. You win if you don't die. The Chunin hopefuls glanced at the orange beast. His face was as passive as theirs were fearful. First round is Shinon Naruto Uzumaki vs Shinon Iko Yamanaka. And just like that, Naruto's face fell.
That's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on my other social media accounts. Anime God here, and I'm signing off.